A Finnish ensemble comedy about a wannabe black metal band with hardcore headbanging, death growls, blood, explosions, and of course, corpse makeup. Heavy Trip offers us a view on the everyday lives of your local European metalheads. Unlike its title, the film isn't heavy at all, with its scenes giving us a few laughs. After all, who wouldn't love a
symphonic post-apocalyptic reindeer grinding Christ-abusing extreme war pagan Fennoscandic metal
band finding meaning to their identities and eventually getting a happy ending? Among the films discussed within the semester, Heavy Trip can be said to have humor deeply ingrained into their narratives. What distinguishes Heavy Trip is how the alienating heavy metal theme gives way to the humorous presentation of its characters, all the while creating a memorable film filled with endearing characters. Warning, spoilers ahead. To the unfamiliar, it might be quite odd to see that such a small town in the middle of nowhere in Finland can have such dedicated metalheads. However, upon closer investigation, Finland is one of the countries where metal has found a home. Comprising of the entire Scandinavian region, many individuals for its respective countries have quite a dedication towards heavy metal in comparison to other regions in Europe. Given this context, most Europeans would find that the setting of the film in heavy metal's home is unsurprising. Aside from this, it also elaborates as to how much such a seemingly small town in Finland is capable of having their token to metalheads. This also includes the reason as to why the members of Impaled Rectum were so insistent on being able to perform in Norway at Northern Damnation. This opportunity presented itself to potentially be their big break, which eventually did them good. Easily identifiable within Heavy Trip is the use of the common Hollywood tropes that created a foundation for the humor displayed throughout the film. There exists Mia, who acts as the love interest of our main protagonist, Turo. In contrast to her, there is Hauni, the local big shot who deems the petty attempts of Impaled Rectum as humorous given that they would not be able to break out anyways. These are but few of the many tropes utilized within the film that allowed the comedy to occur all but naturally. Comedy becomes second nature all throughout the film without ever overshadowing the deep-seated love for metal our main cast of protagonists possesses. It is this complementary relationship that what makes Heavy Trip a comedic success and a worthy homage to its heavy metal predecessors. It was able to thematically incorporate heavy metal into the film without alienating either ends of the spectrum, those unfamiliar to the genre as well as those who are die-hard metalheads. Heavy Trip's story arc is all but familiar to us. Boys looking for their big break but becomes overwhelmed when such opportunity comes that they ruin it for themselves. But of course, eventually, they'll get that big break they deserve. We usually associate these kinds of films with the coming-of-age stories that feature pastel colors and all those inspiring sceneries, or comedy films that feature familiar tropes like a jock befriending a not-so-popular boy, as seen in Hollywood films like 21 Jump Street. The beauty of Heavy Trip, however, is that it is able to use such an unfamiliar culture like the death metal scene and make each of its characters relatable to the viewer. You wouldn't think that Impaled Rectum's members would consist of an overly shy type who works in a retirement home, a childish and hot-headed guitarist who lives with his parents, a genius librarian who remembers every bit of countless metal songs, a big dreamer who's always at risk of death, and an eccentric Laplander whose lullaby is metal. Because we're so used to associating death metal culture to Satanism and the occult, it wouldn't be surprising to see such themes in the film. However, this stereotype is broken as each of the characters are led to breaking free from such assignments as they quite literally travel on the road, jump to their deaths, and ride the Viking ship to their success. First, we see the Centuro, who can't seem to fight for himself despite being larger than the people who make fun of him.
Homo! Onko sä tyttö vai poika? Käy parturissa!
Also, we see Mia's father criticizing Turo for simply being himself, which of course Turo ignores because he's too timid to answer back. But as he comes to terms with their band's failure to book a gig in the Norwegian metal festival called the Northern Damnation, we see Turo grow as he learns to acknowledge those people who bully him, get the girl of his dreams, and finally be able to sing in front of a crowd despite his weak stomach. Turo's redemption from his anxiety and the stereotypes assigned to him led to the group's eventual success, which is a common trope we see in many popular films. It was because of his character's awareness that the movie was able to reach its happy ending. However, we also see other kinds of stereotypes play throughout the film as comedic breaks. For example, Passy recommending a death metal band to a parent and daughter who simply wanted some Justin Bieber songs. And then, in one of the funniest scenes in the film, we see Norwegian border control wrongfully identify men who were simply having a Jesus and the Disciples themed bachelor party as terrorists. In the use of such stereotypes, we see the character develop, and we see how these are used to bring comedic breaks to the film. If you think about it, the entire film itself is breaking from the stereotype of the culture of death metal, and instead proceeded with a wholesome story about friendship and success. One of the distinct themes that this film wants to tell us is the unbreakable bond of friendship. In the first few minutes of the movie, we are introduced to a very outcasted and misunderstood Turo, whose neighbors always makes fun of him and his lifestyle. But as he reaches his friend Lotvonen's basement, we get to see him come out of his shell and be his genuine self. We are then introduced to Jinky, Passy, and Lotvonen, each with their very distinguishable and unique personality. Turo says that they were brought together because of their metal band, but it's easy to tell that their bond is much deeper than that. There is a feeling of acceptance, support, and hope when the four bandmates are brought together, and one can't help but root for these underdogs. Little moments like when they were thinking about what name to name their band, or when they improvised to the speeding camera to make their album art, all contributed to the four's quirky charm. The death of Jinky was sudden and really caused grief within his friends, and it shows. Jinky was always the most supportive and hopeful in the group, it being his ultimate dream to perform in Northern Damnation, the heavy metal festival in Norway. He made sure to remind everyone, especially Turo, of their end goal, and even foreshadowed his own death at the same time.
Se ei muualla, kun me ollaan nyt näin lähellä, niin ei viittis luovuttaa. Minä lähden sinne ainakin vaikka sitä perkele arkussa.
He even, in a very painfully awkward fashion, snuck around the police station to recover Impaled Rectum's album art photo from the speed camera's records. But towards the end of the film, they were able to overcome this grief and honor their friend by literally bringing him to Northern Damnation by digging him up from his grave and strapping him onto their stolen bus. Not to mention kidnapping mentally incapacitated Ula as their new drummer. But one is able to see that Heavy Trip wants to and successfully shows us what true friendship and brotherhood is about. It's about being accepting of each other's differences, growing individually, helping friends out during tough times, and being supported of each other's successes. Although having quite a lot of similarities with most Hollywood films, especially with its themes and characters, what Heavy Trip is also able to do successfully is nuance the preconceived notion of Europe that most foreigners are accustomed to. To many, Europe is often seen as the epitome of art cinema, wherein there is little to no room for comedic breaks in order to focus on the other more worthwhile things such as cinematography and aesthetics. Although there is merit to this can be seen in the early days of European cinema. Films such as Persona and La Aventura can be said to be the films that embody this ideal. Both black and white, the focal point for both of these are the excellent acting by the cast as well as the visual elements that convey the narrative of the respective films. Heavy Trip presents European culture in a manner that is more contemporary. It reveals the Europe that exists in the present, one that is able to give way for films such as Heavy Trip that seems to disregard these formalities from the past. Instead of upholding the imagined reality of what Europe is, Heavy Trip showcases Finland at its most mundane and authentic. The discrimination faced by the main protagonists serves as humorous, but it also provides a view as to how even Finland can have its own set of unreasonable bigots. Indeed, Heavy Trip gives European cinema a richness of character that is beyond its commonly seen snobbiness. For such an easily digestible film, Heavy Trip has many things going for it that makes it worthy of the many positive reviews it has received. Heavy Trip not only created a heavy metal experience that was receptive for both fans and non-fans of the genre, more importantly, it freed itself from the commonly preconceived notion as to what European film should be.